Do you notice the photos of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, which there are many to choose from, never find their way onto Fox News' airwaves? Have you noticed that? It's very strange.
They must not have the license. That must be it.
There's no low for these people. The things that maybe the White House thought could just put this issue to rest after hyping it for so long, haven't worked. And they've lost control of the pet alligator they raised in the bathtub, and now it's going to eat them.
Welcome to Power Lines, presented this week by Beehive. I'm John Passantino.
And I'm Oliver Darcy.
Today, Donald Trump is attacking the press in defense of the Saudi crown prince. The Epstein files are now set to be released, and MAGA media is already working to discredit them. Ben Shapiro is spending big dollars in pursuit of a Golden Globe. But first, Olivia Nuzzi is back in the news, putting Condé Nast, her new employer, in a very uncomfortable position. Before we get started, though, if you're not already subscribed to the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. This week, we're joined by Natalie Korach, who has been reporting on the situation inside Condé Nast as it grapples with the fallout from the latest scandal there. Natalie, how are you doing?
Happy to be here. It has been quite the week. I imagine internally at Condé Nast, they feel the same.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You've been reporting on the situation over there. Olivia Nuzzi, for those who are familiar with the name but can't remember why they remember her, she used to work at the New York Magazine, where she was a Washington correspondent. Status first reported last year that she engaged in a relationship with RFK. After that, she was exiled from there, and she is back working now for Vanity Fair. This week, her ex-fiancé, Ryan Lizza, published an explosive newsletter claiming that she had actually engaged in another relationship with somebody she was reporting on, in addition to RFK. That's the former South Carolina governor, Mark Sanford. This came as a surprise for a lot of people, lit up text chains and probably every media Slack room in the country. But was it really a surprise inside Vanity Fair and Condé Nast?
Well, there are some internally at Condé Nast who did speculate when the news had first come out about her affair with RFK Jr., when Ryan Lizza had made a statement that this wasn't the first time that her personal indiscretions had thwarted a book project of theirs. And so at the time, this was last year, there was internal speculation at Vanity Fair, where I was formerly a staff writer, whether there was more to the story. So I'm not sure how far up the chain of command that goes, whether, that includes Condé Nast leadership broader than Vanity Fair. But there was certainly discussion about it internally, as well as the book itself.
Right. So she has this new book coming out, American Canto, that Oliver, you first reported on as well, that inside the book, she talks about her relationship that she had with RFK. That book, of course, has now been published in an excerpt by Vanity Fair, and it's pretty sensational, where she goes through a bit of her relationship, this emotional affair that she had with him. But are we surprised that this book contains this reporting about her relationship while she was a journalist, right? While she was a reporter covering RFK. And now there's this new reporting that's come out from her ex-fiancé saying actually she engaged in another relationship as well.
This is like a story, I think, built for, it's built for the tabloids, but it's also consuming Washington and Los Angeles at the same time, right? I thought, I think what's really surprising about this whole story is that Condé Nast, has not so far, we're recording this on a Thursday, but has not said a word about the very hefty allegation coming from her ex-fiancé. Now, obviously, it's coming from her ex-fiancé, who clearly was spurned by her and probably, I think it's safe to say harbors negative feelings toward her. So you have to, swallow that context. But at the heart of what he's written here, outside the tabloid nature, is a very serious allegation he's leveling against her, which is that she very blatantly, again, breached very basic journalistic ethics by potentially engaging in a romantic relationship with someone she was profiling at the time, Governor Mark Sanford. And he was running for president in 2020. And so I think it's surprising that Condé Nast and Vanity Fair, given the standards that I think everyone assumes that they hold, has not said a single word about that serious allegation. I can't imagine if it was anyone but Olivia that they would be staying silent. I think they're probably caught in this weird situation where they're not entirely sure how to respond. But I think that's very notable. And I don't know if they're thinking they can just weather the storm and it's going to go away. The issue, of course, is that Ryan Lizza has teased that he's writing a multi-part series, I guess airing a lot of dirty laundry of Olivia's. And so I don't know how they're going to deal with this, but it's surprising, as Natalie pointed out in her piece, because they should have kind of known what they were getting into when they hired her. And I'm not entirely sure how they're so flat-footed here.
Well, the question, I think, is how much of a true calculated risk this was. I mean, if them staying silent on this was a strategy that they had, knowing that there would likely be a lot of controversy given her hire, then, it's a question of how much calculation was put into hiring her in the first place.
And I think also, what did Anna Wintour know and Roger Lynch? Anna Wintour obviously oversees Vanity Fair. It's hard to imagine that Roger, who is the chief executive over at Condé Nast, which is the publisher of Vanity Fair, owns Vanity Fair. It's hard to imagine that those two very key people did not sign off on her hire here. And I'd be curious to know exactly kind of what they knew. Right? Were they aware that these things were lingering in the background, that this could happen? I assume they were. They're smart people. But again, it seems strange that they think that the best way to address this whole thing is by staying entirely silent. They could, I don't know. We don't know what the process looked like for hiring her, but maybe they did talk to her about this. And maybe she did say that she had done other things in the past that, she's not proud of or whatever. And they decided to give her a second chance. Well, if that's the case, they should say it.
It doesn't necessarily exist in a vacuum either. I mean, just last week or just 2 weeks ago, Condé Nast enacted, cost-cutting measures across the company and across different brands. And so on the heels of that, for them to stand by somebody who made significant journalistic ethics breaches, the question is, how serious are they about their journalism?
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Don't you think for any other journalists that having an affair with somebody that you're reporting on, a presidential candidate at the time like RFK, would basically be a career killer? And there's a good reason for that, right? And that is that the trust of the audience can't really exist if they believe that the journalist who's telling them a story is engaging in a personal relationship with the subject of it, right? Like, how can that information be trusted and honest and fact-driven and not couched in a way that's maybe a little bit cozy and soft for the subject matter? How can you actually trust that? And then for the company itself, the publisher, and this is why she lost her job at New York Magazine, right? Like, they're saying, look, you can, obviously we want you to report on these subjects, but if you're having a relationship with them, this undermines the entire practice of journalism. And yet months later, she gets hired in this big, splashy press release from Vanity Fair under their new editor over there. And here she is back. To everybody's surprise, why do you think they were even willing to take this risk?
I think that's a good question. I think that they thought that they were bringing on a big name, and the new editor there, Mark, I can't pronounce his last name. Do you guys want to say his last name?
Mark Guiducci.
Guiducci. Let's just say Guiducci. We hope that's right. But Mark Guiducci, I think, he's come in at Vanity Fair and he's looking to make big hires. And she's obviously a big name out there that was someone he could swoop up. And, we should be clear, Olivia is very talented. She had more covers at New York Magazine than any writer that I'm aware of. She was constantly producing very good journalism at New York Magazine. It's just that she got tangled in, I guess, RFK and possibly Mark Sanford, and now who knows what. And so I think that's the problem, right? It's like there's all these blemishes and questions about her journalism because of her relationships. But I think for Mark, it was a pretty a risky hire, but I think maybe he was thinking it was going to pay off, and she was going to be delivering that kind of, scoopy journalism for Vanity Fair and making that publication a little more relevant.
Right, but doesn't this just raise questions about how she's getting that scoopy journalism, that the way she's getting access to these figures who, I mean, let's be honest, right? Like if you're a politician or you're a lawmaker, inviting a journalist into your world deeply, to profile you comes with a huge amount of risk. Like you have no control over what that journalist is going to write. You can't prevent some moment being exposed to the public that paints you in an uncomfortable light. And to me, it raises questions. And I think for everybody who's now read these pieces and you look back at them and it's like, was this characterized in a more positive light, like this Mark Sanford profile she did, or her, I don't know if I would say glowing, but let's say more positive than neutral for notorious anti-vaxxer RFK, who arguably is responsible for significant conspiracy theories around vaccines and public harm around it, right? And it's hard to see a scenario where you hire a journalist like this with this background, and you also want to portray yourself as one that's delivering truth and honesty to the public. Don't you think this just like harms the public's sense of trust in the press?
Yes, and I think there was an attempt at mitigating that by putting her as the West Coast editor rather than, putting her back in Washington, D.C. and covering the figures that she was entangled with before or covered before. But ultimately, I don't think that necessarily removes the problem. I mean, now she has additional pressure to prove her credibility, and I think that could possibly put her in further compromising situations.
I think it's also interesting this comes to the week that, or, around the time that these emails with Jeffrey Epstein have been released to the public. And the other person who has not romantic relationships with subject Jeffrey Epstein, but was certainly crossing ethical lines was Michael Wolff. And when, he was providing PR advice to Jeffrey Epstein, tipping him off to the fact that CNN was supposed to ask Trump about Jeffrey Epstein. And you saw a look at that relationship. And I kind of think to some extent, like Olivia and Wolff, they just operate, or they think they can operate outside the traditional bounds of journalism, right? Like that they're not beholden to the same set of rules that everyone else is. And, for Wolff, I guess he's able to get away with it because frankly, he has a lot of money, right? And he prints stuff that people want to read. I'm not sure if Olivia is in the same, I think if she were a multimillionaire living in the Hamptons, then maybe she could get away with this, and this would be. But I think it's a lot more difficult when you don't have.
Well, by all accounts, I mean, she is getting away with this. No, I mean, like she has a lucrative book deal that she's publishing. She has a cushy job at Vanity Fair as an editor. They seem at this point to be sticking by her. I mean, by all accounts at this point, she seems to be getting away with it, and as does Wolff. And I think that is also symbolic of this period that we're in of media. We have sort of, succumbed to this brand identity of a journalist rather than, maintaining these journalistic standards. And I think they embody that to a certain degree.
That's a very good point. I also think that for a traditional publication like Vanity Fair with a new editor, they're trying to get people excited about it again. They're trying to make a big splashy hire, and they want to generate buzz. As we know, Mark wants to do that for Vanity Fair and for Condé Nast, and they probably were like, "Hey, she's out there. She's on the market. We could keep her at a distance out in LA, where she hasn't even lived for a year, and made her West Coast editor," which I continue to just be surprised over.
You say that as a former resident of LA.
I am, but like I lived there. I lived in California my entire life. I can't imagine you bring in somebody from Washington and they're there for 6 months and they're now your West Coast editor. It's just like you haven't even figured out the geography of the state in that time. It's like there's so many communities and things going on. But I do think that like this is the result of the hopes that we could make ourselves relevant again. We're going to like get into the public consciousness again by doing this sort of thing. And there was a bunch of really interesting hires that they announced at the same time. It wasn't just Olivia, but she is the one that has stuck out. But they clearly seem to be aware of the fact that, like, she had this history with RFK. She had this book coming, which I think is being portrayed, especially in this big New York Times profile, as maybe gentle toward her, in the sense that, like, she was very emotionally involved in this relationship rather than focusing on the ethics of a journalist.
The headline was, she did it all for love.
Yeah.
That's as gentle as you're going to get from the New York Times, I'd say. I mean, that's actually very glowing.
Right. And like, what other journalist is going to get that sort of treatment?
Well, but that goes back to the point that she is totally getting away with it.
I think what's remarkable too about this is that it's one thing had she gotten a second chance after really owning her mistake and apologizing profusely and asking the public for forgiveness. And you haven't really seen that from her. I mean, she did, when I broke the story last year about the relationship she was secretly carrying on with RFK, she did kind of apologize or say that she was, sorry that her work had distracted from New York Magazine, to something to that effect. But since then, I mean, that was the first comment. People have forgotten about it. Since then, you haven't really heard from her own up to the mistake and say, I realize I betrayed the reader's trust. I hurt my colleagues. I'm so sorry for that. It will never happen again. I've learned my lesson. I've matured as a person. I've been out in LA and I'm really thinking about what I did. And I just really would love that second chance. And I'm thankful that Vanity Fair is giving that to me, blah, blah, blah. Like the thing kind of writes itself, but you haven't seen her do that. Instead, the excerpt that's come out and the New York Times profile really to some extent portrays her as a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's also remarkable as well, is that she would actually have a much easier shot of dismissing the Stanford thing as part of her past that, was happening when she was, let's say, in a toxic relationship and she wasn't, it was just a bad time in her life. And she could have maybe swept that under the rug and dismissed it had she actually owned up to her mistake with RFK. But because she hadn't done that, I think that actually puts her in a much more difficult position. Now, to Natalie's point, she seems to be getting away with the whole thing, and maybe she will keep her job. But I also think that that's something at the core of this as well that's really upsetting readers when you look at the Vanity Fair comments or you look at the dialogue online.
Also, by not coming clean about all of it or being, incredibly self-reflective in this excerpt or in the profile, I think she actually gave Ryan Lizza more power to sort of shape the narrative going forward, because it seems pretty clear at this point that she doesn't get into all of her indiscretions in the book, right? And so he now has leverage to shape her book tour or whatever plans she has going forward about how it goes, because people are going to want to know the other side of the story. And so by not coming clean about all of it and being very self-reflective, I think she actually put herself in a much more difficult position as well. Yeah.
And her publisher, we should note too, has not said anything. Neither has Stanford, who I've texted a couple times asking about this. And, typically I think if the former governor or some, if you were accused of a relationship like this and there was no basis in truth to it, you would probably deny it. We have not seen any denials from anyone at this point. So something to keep in mind as well.
That's right. We've heard nothing from Olivia Nuzzi herself, despite repeated requests for comment on this. No denials from Condé Nast, who continues to also remain quiet. Nothing from Mark Sanford. And hanging over this is Ryan Lizza, who now is suggesting that there's going to be a part 2 to this story, maybe even a part 3. We don't even know how much more he plans to report on his Tell Us News, his Substack. But the illusion here is that there is more to come. So
it also seems that Ryan Lizza has probably evidence that substantiates these claims, because he talks in his piece about how he found like a letter or like diary of some sorts from Olivia, and it's hard to imagine that he probably does not have some archival copy of that somewhere. So, I can't imagine. They probably are wondering. Condé Nast is like, what's going to come out next, and it's unclear how they're going to weather the storm or grapple.
Well,
with
maybe
it.
that's why they haven't gotten in front of it. Maybe this is why, because they're faced with this really uncomfortable question right now, which is like, we just hired Olivia. We just took over the entire, front page of the Vanity Fair website with this excerpt from her forthcoming book. And now we're going to like cut her or suspend her. And that would be an incredibly bad look. They're probably hoping they can weather this, right?
Couldn't they just say we are
in a wait and see posture?
Couldn't they just say we are reviewing the situation and like put like a 5-sentence statement to some extent like that out?
I don't know if they see that as beneficial.
Well, at least it looks like they're taking the allegation seriously. I mean, again, if the New York Times had a writer or the Washington Post had a writer and they were credibly accused of engaging in not one, but now a second indiscretion like this, I cannot imagine a world in which the New York Times does not say a single word after 72 hours. So, I mean, at least this would get them on the board with some sort of response that they are taking this somewhat seriously and they're reviewing it. And it would give them time to kind of evaluate the situation. They're not suspending her. They're not really doing anything. They're just saying they're looking at the situation, which obviously they are. I don't know. I find the lack of response from the Anna Wintours and the Roger Lynches to be strange. And if they are actually committed to real journalism, they sort of owe their readers some sort of explanation here, I think.
Well, we'll see where this goes. Still much to come, it seems, on this scandal. All right, when we come back, Donald Trump is attacking the press in defense over his friend, the Saudi Crown Prince, MBS.
If you're like me, your skin needs some extra care this time of the year. Between colder weather and the holidays fast approaching, it can feel like nonstop stress to your system. That's why I've continued to rely on OneSkin. You know how much I love the OS01 face lotion. So much so that I'll be gifting it to John for the holidays this year. John, congratulations, that's your Christmas present.
I can't wait.
Seriously though, it's been invaluable to have a daily routine that delivers both powerful skincare and longevity benefits all in just a few simple steps.
Certified safe for sensitive skin, OneSkin products are free from over 1,500 harsh or irritating ingredients. Dermatologist tested and have been awarded the National Eczema Association's seal of acceptance by the NEA, delivering powerful results without the side effects.
All of OneSkin's products are designed to layer seamlessly and replace multiple steps in your routine, making skincare easier and smarter at every age.
OneSkin also just launched their limited edition holiday sets, including the Nightly Rewind gift set. Oliver, we gotta get this, which is one of those rare gifts that's both impressive and genuinely useful. Actually, my mother-in-law would love this, providing an upgrade to anyone's nightly routine, featuring their new best-selling face moisturizer, which I think you've been using, their new peptide lip mask, and a cooling gua sha tool.
John, that's what I want for Christmas. So
I want a gua sha tool.
Take notes. Each component of the set is designed to work together, so I can use that with the face lotion, as your body enters its natural nightly repair mode, helping renew skin at the cellular level for a stronger, smoother, and more resilient skin.
I'm still excited about the cooling gua sha tool.
Sounds very nice.
For a limited time, try OneSkin for 15% off using code STATUS at oneskin.co/status. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Welcome back. So, Oliver, this week, Donald Trump was hosting Mohammed bin Salman. This is the Saudi crown prince, the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, a country known for its human rights abuses, but trying to push itself forward into the modern era, moving away from oil. MBS, though, has been a global pariah for years since the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. He's a former Washington Post columnist and writer. The CIA had determined years ago that MBS either ordered or orchestrated his murder when he went into a consulate and never came out. He has not been seen in Washington since then. But this week, Donald Trump welcomes him with open arms, calls him his friend, has him seated right next to him in the Oval Office. And when reporters are gathered in the Oval Office, come to ask questions, one of them, an ABC News reporter named Mary Bruce, poses a question about Jamal Khashoggi. Let's play a clip.
Mr. President, is it appropriate, Mr. President, for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while you're president? Is that a conflict of interest? And Your Royal Highness, The U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst.
question is
One of the
legitimate,
worst
sir.
in the business. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. They're going to psych. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter.
So Trump is clearly taking some of his more authoritarian anti-press rhetoric here and going after the press right in front of a heavy-handed authoritarian leader of Saudi Arabia, where you do not have the press freedoms that you have in the United States. And here he's going after her very hard in defense of MBS, a totally shocking moment. I think everybody, both in the room and outside, were totally stunned over this. What do you make of this?
Well, I thought, one of the great things is when these authoritarian leaders come to the United States, or there's some sort of summit where there's a press conference, is that for the first time, they have to face tough questions from the free press in the United States. And that's actually one of the great things about living in this country, is that we have a free press that can ask hard questions to people who should be held accountable and may not always be confronted by pointed questions. And so really, someone like Donald Trump should celebrate that. And that's a point of pride, that when we have a press that asks tough questions, and that we everyone's held accountable, and this is part of the American tradition. Instead, you see him betray American values and attack the press for doing its job, and go to the aid of someone who butchered or ordered the butchering of an American journalist, someone working for the Washington Post. And in addition to that, right, it's not like there's a lot of freedom happening in Saudi Arabia these days. Now, are they moving in a more westward direction as they seek tourism dollars? Yes. But it's not like, women enjoy the same rights in Saudi Arabia as they enjoy in the United States. We just talked about the Riyadh Comedy Festival. It's not like those comedians could go over there and joke about the government of Saudi Arabia. And so, I thought really what Donald Trump did here was a betrayal of American values by attacking the press and not allowing them to ask these questions. Very basic questions, by the way, too.
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't even asking a difficult question here. I think his defense is quite revealing. He has been rolling out the red carpet, like literally, for the Saudis. I think he really wants to bring some, to increase the relationship between the U.S. and the Saudis on the business end. He himself is entangled, his family business, with the Saudis, with potential deals. There's a lot going on here. Later that day, they held what is effectively a state dinner for MBS, where multiple members of the big tech leadership in this country, but also very interesting David Ellison, who now runs Paramount, thanks to his father, Larry Ellison, who is also closely connected with Donald Trump. They were all gathered together at the state dinner afterward, which is a pretty remarkable scene. As everybody now knows, David Ellison and Paramount are also now trying to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, which is effectively put itself for sale and is on the market. There is a deadline this week for bids in order to effectively decide who is going to be the future owner of this storied legacy studio business, cable business. CNN is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. This is a huge moment for it. Ellison seems to really want to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, and is getting very close to Trump. We had heard, you reported this week, Oliver, that that Ellison and Paramount had gone shopping for maybe some dollars overseas in the Middle East as well. Is that part of this whole situation?
Well, I think there's a lot going on here. So one, Donald Trump definitely favors the Ellisons purchasing purchasing the Warner Brother Discovery. They already own Paramount. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that who was at the state dinner? It was David Ellison. Was Brian Roberts, the Comcast honcho, who wants pieces of Warner Brother Discovery, was he at the state dinner? He was not. Was anyone from Netflix at the state dinner? They were not. The person at the state dinner was David Ellison, who has developed a good relationship with Donald Trump, and his father obviously is a close ally, someone who actually was, election denying back in 2020. We forget this often, but he joined a call, according to the Washington Post, about how to overturn the results of the 2020 election. So it's clear why Donald Trump likes the Ellisons. And so he favors them. But yes, you're right. Ellison has had conversations with folks in the Middle East, the various funds in the Arab nations, about possibly joining in on the bid to purchase Warner Brother Discovery. They want to purchase this whole thing whole. So they want the entire company. They want the dying cable assets, as well as the streamer HBO Max and the storied studio Warner Brothers Pictures. The other two likely bidders, Netflix, which is going to put a bid in, as well as Comcast, they only want the growth assets, which are the streamer and the studio, and they don't have any interest in purchasing those cable channels like CNN, HGTV, et cetera, et cetera. So who will win remains to be seen, but certainly there's a possibility some Middle Eastern money is going to be involved there. And it's hard to imagine that with David Ellison in the room and MBS in the room, this probably didn't come up.
Yeah, it seems to me that the Ellisons want to court the Saudis as part of this in order to sort of shortcut a potential move from Brian Roberts and Comcast at getting funding or getting some money in order to finance a deal like Warner Brothers Discovery. WBD is much larger than the purchase of Paramount was, which was tortured and went through this long process just a few months ago. WBD is a much bigger, much more established player. It has larger studio business. It is a much bigger online streamer with HBO Max and its talent. I'm trying to figure out why Ellison, whose father Larry is one of the richest men in the world, literally owns his own Hawaiian island, Lanai, why he would even need the Saudis as part of this. And my assumption here is that it's a way to get into a better place that makes the Trump administration more comfortable in a way, and that he has developed this friendship relationship backing by the Saudis as well, as we see Trump want to really ingratiate himself, really get cozy. He's literally touching MBS in the Oval Office. They're like playing footsie together. Did you see? It's totally insane. It feels like this is a way for Ellison, who does not need the money, to also say, hey, this is a potential partner of mine too. And if you guys greenlight this potential deal, you've got nothing to worry about on this front.
Well, we also should point out that Larry Ellison, who has the money, has lost quite a bit of money in recent months as the Oracle stock has, slid a little bit. I think he's lost over $100 billion or something like that in recent months. So, I don't know if he needs the money. He's still one of the wealthiest men in the world, but certainly spending someone else's money couldn't hurt a little bit. But I think, to your point, the Saudis would love to get their hands on a storied movie studio like Warner Brothers, to be able to be involved in projects with Paramount Pictures, where maybe those movies, are shot maybe in part in Saudi Arabia. The film stars go to Saudi Arabia, et cetera, et cetera. And if Brian Roberts is courting them and saying, hey, you should help us get this, and there'll be something in exchange for you, that could be very interesting to the Saudis. So perhaps by David Ellison going to them and saying, hey, Trump actually likes us. This deal has a lot more of a chance of going through if you back us, so you don't back Roberts. That sort of takes the wind out of Brian Roberts' sails and makes it more difficult for him to get a deal across the finish line.
The deal had a deadline on Thursday, which is today, the day we're recording this. As of now, we have heard, you've reported that Paramount, of course, Comcast, and Netflix are the big bidders here in this. Do you have any bets on who do you think is going to pull it off? Well,
it doesn't seem like Warner expects any, surprises at the last minute, like anyone to come in, but who knows, and things do happen. I just typically don't think it's smart to bet against the richest people in the world. So, when Elon Musk initially wanted Twitter, he ends up getting it. I have a feeling that given the political power that the Ellisons have with Donald Trump, an ally in the White House, as well as the financial power they have, being among the wealthiest people in the world, it just seems hard to imagine that they'll have this ripped out of their hands. But you never know. And I think at the end of the day, David Zaslav, who controls Warner Brother Discovery, does not want this to go to David Ellison. I don't think he likes David Ellison. I don't think he likes the Ellisons very much. I think he wants to remain in power himself and be a media mogul, and doesn't want to lose the glamour that comes with it, the trappings that come with being a major Hollywood executive. And he knows that if he goes to Paramount, while David Ellison has offered him, a co-CEO role, that's all sort of that's a vanity title. It's a vanity position. I think he'd much rather be at Comcast, where he could potentially be the head of NBC Universal, a position that's been vacant since Jeff Shell, who now is over with Ellison, was ousted in 2023. And so, theoretically, Comcast buys Warner Brother Discovery's streaming asset. They buy the studio. David Zaslav perhaps can go run the whole thing and be the head of NBC Universal. And I think he'd much rather have that outcome. The question is, what does the board want? And the board has a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders to get the best deal for them. And I don't know. I mean, it just seems hard to imagine the board turning down a cash offer, mostly cash offer from the Ellisons, instead of, and they turn that down and then they decide to spin off the dying cable assets and then sell the streamer and studio side to another company. Maybe that unlocks more value down the line. It's possible, certainly possible. Some analysts have said that or argued that. But you're asking shareholders then to take a bet on you. And everything you've told shareholders up until now has not worked out, right? The AT&T deal with Time Warner did not work out. They abandoned that deal, and it was a very big embarrassment for AT&T. And the logic behind the initial Warner Brother Discovery company has not worked out, hence why they're now trying to sell it in pieces or whole. Right. And so do shareholders want to take Zaslav's strategy to unlock more value and run with that, given his track record or the track record of this entire company? Or do they want to take the bird in the hand? I think that's the question that it comes down to.
Yeah. Though at this point, the big sticking point still has been that Paramount has only offered under $25 a share, like $23.50, $24 or so. And if Zaslav and the board want closer to $30 a share, which I'm not sure if it's actually worth that, but that's a whole other topic. Maybe Brian Roberts and Comcast slide in with an offer just carving out studios and streamers. Like you said, David Zaslav becomes the NBC Universal president, which would be a fantastic title for him. And we know that he would love something like that. That's pretty enticing, right? And it also just prolongs his continued existence in the business. He was quoted long ago as saying, if you're not in this chair, like who are you anymore? Nobody's paying attention. I do think that there's a chance. And I do think for Comcast, it is a once, maybe in a lifetime opportunity for them to really scale up their Peacock business that right now is small, only available in the US, and they want to be able to grow this thing. And how are they going to be able to ever do that? Is it just going to be a minor side player for forever? And frankly, this is Ellison's problem with Paramount and Paramount Plus too, right? Both of these are like very niche, very small players, even though we know who they are and we talk about them. But they are not even remotely in the same ballpark as Netflix and YouTube right now. And they know they need scale. But it is a huge question hanging over this of regardless of those two, of who is going to be the highest bidder, whether or not this administration would ever greenlight it. And it seems very much that David Ellison is in a pole position with this administration, invited to hang out at the White House, going to the state dinner, right there in the same room as MBS, that he is the one who is, let's say, the golden child in this case, who is in the best position.
And before we go, we should say that the outlet, the asset in the Warner Brother Discovery portfolio that's really drawing the short end of the stick here is CNN, which is quite sad given the need for strong journalism today. But if CNN is sold as part of Warner Brother Discovery to Paramount, it's going to likely fall under the jurisdiction of Barry Weiss, who's going to push that outlet further into pro-Trump waters. If it's not sold, it's going to be spun off to this separate company that's going to be led by Gunnar. I can't pronounce your last name, Gunnar, but Gunnar Weidenfelds. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Who is a notorious cost cutter, who's wanted to cut CNN's balance sheet for some time and really take an axe to it. And so it just feels like CNN, no matter what outcome there is for the overall company, really is quite frankly screwed either way. And I just think it's a very sad outcome for the brand, because it's arguably the most recognized news outlet in the world. It's needed. You want these outlets to shine light in dark places, and I don't know. It just feels like there's no good outcome here in this transaction for that company.
All right. Well, when we come back, Ben Shapiro is going big for a Golden Globe, and the Epstein files are about to be released, and MAGA media is already running defense for Trump.
Let me take a quick minute to tell you about the platform we use to run Status. It's called Beehive, and I've got a special offer for readers coming up. But first, here's a little background on why Beehive was right for Status. When I started this newsletter, I needed a platform that could grow with us. Something powerful enough for serious publishers, but simple enough to build without a large team of engineers or designers.
That's exactly what we found with Beehive. It was built by the same team behind Morning Brew, so they understand what it takes to grow an audience and build a real business around your work. Since launching, two things have made a huge difference. First, our newsletter actually reaches people because the deliverability is outstanding. We don't really have to worry about spam filters anymore. Second, the paid subscription setup is incredibly easy. This is where you can charge for access to your newsletter. Beehive handles payments, subscriber management, all of it. That lets us stay focused on the journalism while the platform turns our work into a sustainable business.
Whether you're an independent writer or running a larger publication, Beehive gives you everything in one place. A clean editor, a website for your publication, powerful growth tools like referrals and recommendations, and multiple ways to make money from day one. If you're thinking about starting a newsletter or switching platforms, Beehive is offering Status readers 30% off your first 3 months with code STATUS30.
Visit beehive.com/status. That's BEEHIIV.com/status and start building your newsletter today. Welcome back. Just a reminder, if you're not already subscribed to the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Oliver, this week has been pretty interesting on the upcoming Golden Globes front. Ben Shapiro, the conservative podcaster, has launched no other way to say this, but a very high dollar visual campaign for your consideration in order to clearly in his hopes of winning a Golden Globe. This is the very first year that the Golden Globes, which is now owned by Jay Penske and the Penske Media Corporation, has included a new award group segment for podcasters. And they've announced a number of podcasts that are eligible for it, including, Ben Shapiro, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, Joe Rogan, some pretty eye-opening.
Tucker Carlson.
Pretty remarkable. Obviously, they have large audiences, and so it is what it is. But Shapiro seems like he is taking this race really seriously. We got our hands this week on some photos that show that Shapiro has this massive campaign on the electronic billboards inside Times Square, towering over people. I mean, these are multi-story electronic billboards that show him smiling. He's got his sunglasses on. He's looking cool, right?
He's looking Hollywood.
It's very Hollywood. It says best podcast, and for your consideration, he's sort of posed up against a wall. It's pretty remarkable. Then inside of Variety magazine, which Jay Penske owns, sort of their premier publication, they're also running these glossy, right inside the cover when you open it up, and there's that really nice, very expensive first possible ad you see. That is now Ben Shapiro's spot in the last week's edition with Best Podcast. He's taking this seriously, but Shapiro hasn't always loved the Golden Globes. In fact, we went back and looked at what he said about the Golden Globes just last year. Take a look.
Alrighty, folks. So the Golden Globes happened last night. I don't know why anyone watched it. I'm so glad that we spent not 3 hours with those people. Hope you enjoyed that review of the Golden Globes, because even those 20 minutes were painful for me.
John, it seems like his tone has shifted quite dramatically. This is someone who is, again, just last year, bashing the Golden Globes, questioning who would even want to waste their time watching this, saying he couldn't imagine spending 3 hours with those people. And now he's paying a lot of money trying to spend 3 hours with those people.
Honestly, remarkable. The only thing that has changed from literally last year and all the previous years of the Golden Globes is now we have a new category of Best Podcasts. And it seems that he has decided that this is a great way to get serious credibility in this space, right? Like, podcasting is a very crowded space, especially in the right-wing media world right now, which is going through total convulsions as it fractures and it tears itself apart over, white supremacy and Nazi views being sort of injected into the mainstream via people like Tucker Carlson, who are on this very list. Megyn Kelly, who is defending Tucker Carlson. Like, they're tearing themselves apart. It does seem like Ben Shapiro here has decided that he wants to be, it's like almost mainstream. He wants the mainstream credibility and praise from the industry, but I don't know if that actually works for his brand. If anything, it actually seems a little hypocritical.
Yeah, well, it's very hypocritical because he's been trashing Hollywood and trashing all these elites for his entire career. That's how he got to where he is, right? Like, he's been leading the charge. You saw in the video just last year, he was mocking the Golden Globes. I mean, mocking award shows has been a thing in right-wing media for some time. So it's not too surprising that was what he was saying a year ago. What's surprising is now that he's spending tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even more, to try to win an award from a show he's built a career on mocking. And not only the show have they mocked, but the idea of Hollywood has always been like a villain, a boogeyman in right-wing media. Doesn't represent the values of the country. These are elitists. These are liberals. These are people who are destroying the country. And now he is trying to spend a lot of money wooing over that audience, trying to get this best Golden Globe. And I think it's part of a calculated play by Ben Shapiro. He's sort of maxed out, I think, the right-wing conservative audience. Like, those people, if you're not listening to him already in that audience, like, not much he's going to do, I think, to win you over. But recently, in addition to the Golden Globes, you've seen him pop up on CNN. Remember, he did that special election program with CNN. And it seems almost like he's trying to move past just winning over the conservative audience and winning over maybe a broader swath of the country that might consider his podcast if he just appears a little bit more palatable, a little bit less like the younger Ben Shapiro, who was outspoken on, I guess, issues like Hollywood, and more, a little more mainstream.
Yeah, I do think that's the case as well. But I just find it hard to square that with the fact that over the years, while Shapiro himself is a more reasonable conservative, he does mainstream a lot of views that a lot of the fringier and farther right people have really harnessed and grown a really large audience and I think become more radicalized. It was Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire that hired people like Candace Owens and really fostered her to become this, online far right juggernaut now, where Shapiro and her have parted ways, and Shapiro has in the meantime since really sort of laid into her over her views around Israel and Gaza, accusations of anti-Semitism. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. It does feel like to me that Shapiro's now suddenly decided to sort of lean back toward, let's say, center-right position that would be palatable for mainstream audiences. But I question whether or not that's going to work and whether or not he's going to be able to keep his current audience as well.
His company has made a lot of money profiting off of extremist rhetoric. I mean, it's not only Candace Owens, who famously worked at the Daily Wire, people like Matt Walsh, who say horrendous things on their programs on a regular basis. I think there was one comment he made about food stamps, like if immigrants were going to die if they didn't get food stamps, like he would say, don't give it to them or something like that. There's been commentary on the Daily Wire about giving the Chicago mayor the death penalty. I mean, really extreme rhetoric that Ben Shapiro, while he doesn't say it himself, certainly profits off of it because these people work at his company, the company that he founded. And also, it's worth pointing out that while he was never Trump, like he literally wrote, he will never, ever support Donald Trump. That's a column he wrote in 2015, 2016. He now did campaign for Donald Trump this time around. And so he helped bring him back into power. He supports most of the things that Donald Trump is doing in this country. And while he does occasionally speak out against the far excesses of Trumpism, he is a Trump supporter. And so anyway, I think it's, he is certainly more moderate in today's world of conservative media or MAGA media, but it's not like he is a truly moderate himself either.
I think he senses an opportunity, right? Especially right now under this administration, which is greenlighting deals. As long as you inject more conservative views into your air, whether that is on CNN, whether that is at Paramount with CBS, with Barry Weiss now running the newsroom there. I think he senses a real opportunity, and maybe it was a trial balloon by going on CNN that election night not long ago and sort of testing the waters. And if he wins Best Podcast, right, all that does is just sort of raise his profile even more and give him more mainstream credibility. Mm-hmm. That's my read here.
Also, we should point out too that Jay Penske, who's the owner of the Golden Globes, as well as all these trade publications, is basically willing to sell these awards for profit. And so you can pay, Ben Shapiro can pay $75,000 to Variety, and they will give him an award, and he will have a much better shot at winning the Golden Globes or the Golden Globe or being nominated. And I think just being nominated, if you can say, if any movie is nominated for like an Oscar or Golden Globe, they always mark it off of it, right? Like nominated for 14, Golden Globes or and you could see a scenario where Ben Shapiro gets to say his program was nominated for a Golden Globe. He gets to walk the red carpet. He gets to take the pictures with the celebrities and be really embraced by Hollywood. And that is very valuable if you're trying to court a more mainstream broad audience. And so, and basically Penske is to some extent selling better chances of winning that award if you just pay him some money.
Yep. Or he gets to go to the red carpet, or he gets to take the stage. He gets to stand in front of the microphone and own the libs in front of everybody and just raise his profile even more. He could use that for his audience and they would just absolutely eat that up.
I mean, he could do both. I mean, I would imagine he would do a version of both, right? But
he's paying a lot of money, though. Like this Times Square campaign that we saw, this is not cheap. This is not a 5-figure electronic billboard deal. This is very expensive. We don't, I don't know the actual number here, but it seems like if you want to have an electronic takeover at Times Square, it's an expensive ad campaign.
And for those listening, it's not just one billboard. It's not just 2 billboards or 3 billboards or 4 billboards. I believe it's 5. It's a very aggressive campaign he's mounting.
It's pretty large.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's certainly massive. Speaking of the MAGA media, the House, the Senate, and now Donald Trump have all signed off on finally releasing the Epstein files that we've been talking about for so long. Donald Trump, truly embarrassed in this situation, does a total reversal, announces that he is fine with releasing it. All this time he's been calling it a Democrat hoax. I mean, like, you name it. His reversal is obvious because he is named in there. The Wall Street Journal and others have shown documents have come out. New emails have been released showing his very tight friendship and connection to Jeffrey Epstein. All of this is like gross. But MAGA media, Fox News, his primetime friends over there, are already running defense for him. Check this out.
I want to take a moment and set the record straight. This Democratic smear campaign, by the way, there's some Republicans, they've been championing the release of this, surrounding Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. It's kind of gone on long enough. They are politicizing their base in a clearly, we're now learning, dishonest effort, once again, to get Donald Trump at all costs.
Remember, Epstein was a Democrat. He was a Democrat donor. And he hung out with Democrats and the liberal media at all of his homes.
Left-wing saboteurs want the world to believe that Trump has something to hide.
Oh my God. This is it's so embarrassing. Like, this is really sad. It's really embarrassing. Suggesting that this is now, well, Jeffrey Epstein was a Democrat. Wasn't Donald Trump a Democrat? Didn't he donate to Hillary Clinton, if I remember correctly? And wasn't he like best friends with Jeffrey Epstein? This idea that they're trying to distance him now from it looks just so pathetic and transparent.
The photos, do you notice the photos of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, which there are many to choose from, never find their way onto Fox News' airwaves? Have you noticed that? It's very strange.
They must not have the license. That must be it.
They can't afford those Getty images or whatever whoever's licensing them. Yeah, that's exactly it. There's no low for these people. Like, they will just do whatever they can to defend Donald Trump. And it's so remarkable because you were talking like, Donald Trump is saying it's a Democratic hoax. He was the one that fanned the flames of the Epstein files. He was the one talking about how, they needed to release the Epstein files years ago and how certain candidates were going to be in trouble if that files came out. And now it turns out he's all over the files, right? Like, it's very clear Donald Trump is all over those files. And he does not want them now to see the light of day and is trying to pretend, flip the script and say it's bad for the Democrats. Yeah, like, it's probably not good for powerful people in general if these files come out. I don't think it's like really cutting one way or the other in terms of politics. But Donald Trump seems to be, caught up in them. And it's sad that someone like Jesse Waters and Laura Ingraham, who have been hyping them to their audience for so long, are now trying to basically discredit the Epstein files. And I think at the heart of it too, it's like, these were very serious abuses, and people across the public, left or right, they want to see accountability for people that were associated for Jeffrey Epstein. And Donald Trump is I think there should be some accountability there as well.
The Epstein files have been a cause celeb on the right for so long. Donald Trump literally picked Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, in part to make good on this whole thing, that there's this conspiracy that we're going to expose the liberal elites who are part of this pedophile ring. And obviously Trump knew that he was close to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, obviously, but I think maybe he is, he must have just assumed that he was going to get out of that in some way, or that they hadn't gathered enough emails. Trump famously doesn't use a computer and he famously doesn't email, right? So maybe he thought like, okay, there's nothing contemporaneous that's going to tie me to this whole situation. But as we have seen, like, the Journal produced this birthday card where there's this drawing of a prepubescent girl. I mean, it's like, and it's his signature on there. It seems like he's trying his absolute best to get out of this. And by poisoning the waters repeatedly in recent days by saying this is a Democrat hoax, you now see that regurgitated from these Fox News hosts and from many stars in the right. I've seen Tommy Lauren talk about this stuff online, that this is the Dems are just going after him now, and they're going to try to falsely portray him, but there's nothing in here. We saw the White House come out and say all that these emails have shown thus far is that Donald Trump is innocent. They haven't shown that at all. I mean, fact, it's the opposite. It ties him even more closely than anybody ever knew. But I do think that like this is quite revealing. I think behind the scenes, Oliver, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Jesse Waters, I mean, you name them. I think they all know, and they're all whispering about this behind the scenes going, oh boy, he might be cooked here. And I don't think Trump is going to be able to escape this because his bases want it. Now the Democrats have been wanting this, sensing blood in the water here. And I don't see a way that he's going to be able to escape this because there is now a incentive even for the MAGA media, his own base, to say, you know, we're getting this stuff out there. A lot of them have put their own reputations out there as saying this is a big deal for us. The Benny Johnsons of the space and all this, who've long fanned these. Well, they've long fanned these flames.
I don't know if they're
not?
going to actually go in on Trump like they would if it was Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton or whoever, you know, in the files. I think that they're going to be quite generous in the way they cover the files. I mean, some of them have been a little bit more aggressive, but it's still not the same. If this was a Democratic president stuck in the Epstein files,
Sure.
I mean, it would be apocalyptic. Yeah. You never hear the end of it. I do also think that Donald Trump thought he could dig his way out of this by just kind of throwing like flares up to distract MAGA media with. You know, you've seen that happen. And then you also saw too, when early on in the administration, when they invited those influencers to the Department of Justice, and they were given these like, you know, files that really didn't say anything and largely were redacted. And it's almost like the things that maybe the White House thought could just put this issue to rest after hyping it for so long haven't worked. And they've lost control of the pet alligator they raise in the bathtub. And now it's going to eat them and wants to bite their arm off.
I suspect that he was going to treat this the way that he treats his healthcare plan that's coming any day. Is every time he gets asked about it, how are you going to replace Obamacare? We've got this whole special plan in the works. It's 2 weeks away. And I think he believed that he could continue to just kick this can down the road and then it would never, but these documents have been coming out, the emails have been getting released, and they're really bad for him. And look, I don't know if there's going to be some smoking gun hidden in there. I have no idea. But at the same time, I think that all of this has really cast a shadow over Trump, over MAGA, and JD Vance, who was calling for this stuff and wants to be the heir apparent here. And I think it's going to be very fascinating to continue to watch how right-wing media dances around this. They definitely don't want Trump to be implicated here and look like he was knowledgeable about pedophilia activity. But at the same time, I think some of them have their own reputations that they care about as well. And, you know, you've got certain folks in the space who maybe will try to present themselves as honest and not look like they're bending over backwards to save him. All right, well, we'll see. It looks like we've got about the next month for the Justice Department to now release these files. So we've got some time here. I think in the meantime, there's going to be some lots of questions as to what these are going to show.
When do you think, John, they're going to come out? Like Christmas Day, Christmas Eve? When is the drop happening?
It's like December 24th at 11:59 p.m. Sounds like a great time to release the Epstein files, doesn't it?
Sounds
a
like
very
that's
convenient
probably
time.
what's going to happen if I had to guess. Or New Year's Eve.
Honestly, that's probably what's going to happen here. But we will see.
Christmas present for all.
just bury this under the tree.
Santa's going to be in his sleigh just dumping the Epstein files overnight. Bags of them just falling out of the sky. Anyway.
Oliver, it's been another great week with you. Again, a reminder, if you're not already subscribed to Power Lines, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. We'll catch you next week. Thank you for listening to Power Lines, a presentation of Status, and a special thank you to Beehive for sponsoring this episode. The show is produced by Matt Havia and Antonio Enriquez in association with In the Arena Studios. Please like, share, and subscribe to Power Lines on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen, and watch full episodes and clips on our YouTube page at Status.